wire transfers, the mortgage payments, the car lease renewals I'd been quietly authorizing for 3 years. None of it crossed my mind when I walked out of that restaurant. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just got in my car, drove home, and called my bank. I need to freeze all secondary authorized users on my accounts, effective immediately. That was a Tuesday. By Friday, my sister-in-law couldn't fill her gas tank. Let me back up. I'm 31 years old. I run the compliance division at a mid-size investment firm in Charlotte. I worked my way up from a junior analyst position at 24, survived 2 rounds of layoffs, and by the time I was 28, I was making more money than I knew what to do with. I grew up watching my mother clip coupons at the kitchen table, so for a long time I just kept saving, kept my apartment modest, drove the same Civic I'd bought used in grad school. Then my brother got married. His wife, I'll just call her what she is, my sister-in-law, came from a family that believed appearances were everything, not in a subtle way. In a loud, exhausting, every conversation eventually circles back to what things cost kind of way. She had a vision for their life together. A house in a good zip code. European vacations. Private school conversations happening years before they even had kids. My brother, who I'd always known as someone who ate cereal for dinner and thought a good weekend meant watching football in sweatpants, transformed almost immediately into someone who talked about investment properties and personal branding. It started small. My brother called me about 6 months after the wedding. They'd found a house they loved but were short on the down payment. Just a gap. He'd pay me back within a year, he said. He sounded embarrassed about it, which made me want to help him more. I wired $42,000 and told him not to worry about it. He didn't pay me back. I told myself it was fine. It was family. I wasn't hurting. What I didn't understand then, what took me an embarrassingly long time to understand, was that the moment I said yes that first time without any conditions, I had established a rule. The rule was, she can be asked. She will give. There are no consequences. Over the next 3 years, I paid for things I didn't even always know I was paying for until I saw the charges. My sister-in-law had a habit of mentioning things offhandedly. Oh, we're going to Scottsdale for my friend's bachelorette. Flights are just insane right now. And somehow that turned into me offering. Or she'd send me a link to something. A stroller, a sectional sofa, tickets to some fundraiser gala my mother wanted to attend. I want to be clear, no one ever said give us money. It was always softer than that. Always framed as sharing information. The ask was implied and I was expected to receive it correctly. My mother was the one who made me feel the most guilty about not giving. She'd been living in the same house in Greensboro for 30 years, and about 2 years ago the roof started failing. I paid for that without being asked because I genuinely wanted to. Then there was the HVAC. Then the bathroom renovation that was actually my sister-in-law's idea, but that somehow became my mother's project. I didn't understand at the time how those two women operated in coordination. I do now. The part that is hardest to explain is that I wasn't miserable during those years. I was busy. I was proud of my career. I told myself I was lucky to be able to help my family and that the help meant something. I'd grown up without much and now I could provide. That felt good. I let that feeling paper over a lot of things I should have looked at more closely. The invitation to my mother's birthday dinner arrived as a text from my sister-in-law, which should have told me something. It was at a steakhouse downtown, the kind with leather booths and a sommelier, and there were going to be about 20 people, mostly my mother's friends from her church group and a few neighbors. Formal-ish, my sister-in-law said. Nice. I wore a dress I liked. Dark green, simple. I'd had a long week and I wasn't in the mood to perform, but I loved my mother and it was her birthday, and I drove the 40 minutes without complaining. I arrived to find that my sister-in-law had arranged a seating plan. I was at the far end of the table, next to a woman I'd met once at a Christmas party, while my sister-in-law sat at my mother's right hand. My brother was at the other end, already deep in conversation with someone I didn't recognize. I found my place, said hello to the woman beside me, and settled in. Dinner was fine until it wasn't. The trouble started with a toast. My sister-in-law stood up with her glass and began speaking about my mother, warmly, effusively, in that particular way she had of making a moment about herself, while appearing to make it about someone else. She talked about how much my mother meant to her, how she'd become the mother she never felt she'd had, how grateful she was to be part of this family. She did not mention me at any point during the toast. I wasn't going to say anything. I genuinely wasn't. I had taken a sip of my wine and was preparing to applaud with everyone else when my mother caught my eye from across the table and said, loudly enough that the conversation around us quieted, "You always look like you're keeping score." I blinked. "What?" "That expression on your face right now," she said. "Like you're the only one who sees clearly. You've always done that. Even when you were a girl. It makes people uncomfortable." The table had gone quiet in that horrible spreading way, where one end realizes something is happening and stops talking to listen, and then the next end notices the silence and stops, and within about 4 seconds, 20 people are watching. I said, very calmly, "I'm not doing anything, Mom. I was just listening." "You were making a face," my sister-in-law said, sitting back down slowly like she was settling in to watch. "I wasn't," I said. "You were judging," my mother said. "You always think you're better than everyone else in this room. You have since you started making money. Like you're doing us a favor by showing up." I want to remember exactly what I felt in that moment, and the honest answer is nothing at first. Just a kind of stillness. Like the sound had gone out. Then my mother said, "You embarrass me? You know that? You sit there like you're above it all, and you embarrass me in front of my friends." I put my napkin on the table. "I'm going to go," I said. I stood up, said goodbye to the woman next to me, and walked to the front of the restaurant to get my coat. I didn't look back at the table. I heard my sister-in-law say something behind me, but I couldn't make out the words and I didn't try to. I drove home. I didn't call anyone. I didn't text. I sat in my apartment for about an hour and thought about the past 3 years, with a level of clarity I hadn't been able to access before. $42,000 for a down payment that was never repaid. $11,000 for a kitchen renovation at my mother's house, framed as a shared investment in the home I grew up in. $6,000 for a vacation my brother's family took to Portugal because my sister-in-law wanted Lisbon for their anniversary, and sent me a photo of the rental villa with the caption, "Isn't this dreamy?" Car lease payments. My brother's truck, because trucks are work vehicles and the write-off didn't end up applying the way they thought. $3,000 a month for 14 months. Private club membership renewal, just this once, until they get back on their feet. $4,000 in medical bills from a procedure my sister-in-law had that our insurance didn't fully cover, sent to me with the words, "I know this is a lot to ask, but we really don't have anyone else." I had a spreadsheet, as it turned out. I'd made it about a year earlier when I'd started feeling vaguely uneasy, but hadn't yet admitted to myself why. I opened it that night and added up everything I hadn't already added. The total was higher than I'd let myself acknowledge. It was high enough that I sat with it for a while before I closed the laptop. Then I called my bank. I removed my brother and sister-in-law as authorized users on the credit card I'd added them to 2 years ago for emergencies. I called the leasing company for my brother's truck and gave notice that I would not be renewing authorization for the payment arrangement at the end of the billing cycle. 3 weeks out, I sent an email to the billing department at my mother's home security company, which I'd been paying since she mentioned she was nervous after a break-in 3 streets over, and canceled the renewal. I did it all quietly. No announcements, no explanations, no phone calls to tell them what was coming. I want to be honest about why I did it that way. Part of it was self-protection. I didn't want to have a conversation that would end with me being talked back into something. But part of it was something colder than that. I had been called embarrassing, in front of 20 people, by my mother. And I had walked out of that restaurant without raising my voice or making a scene, and it had cost me nothing except the 40-minute drive home. But what she'd said had not cost her anything either. I decided to change the math. The first call I got was from my brother. 6 days after the dinner, 9 days after I'd made the calls to the bank and the leasing company. His truck payment had bounced. He was confused, he said. There must have been some kind of error. "There's no error," I said. "I canceled the arrangement." Silence. "What do you mean you canceled it?" he said. "Not a question exactly. I mean, I called them and told them I wouldn't be continuing to pay, so I'm not." You could have. I mean, you should have said something. Given us some warning. Mom gave me a lot less warning before she said what she said at dinner. Another silence. She was upset, he said. You know how she gets. She didn't mean it like that. She said I embarrass her, in front of her friends, in a restaurant. She's been stressed. She's been stressed. The renovation ran over budget and there were some things with the— I know about the renovation, I said. I paid for it. He didn't say anything to that. I'm not angry, I told him, and I was mostly telling the truth. I'm just done. He hung up. I made coffee and went to work. My sister-in-law called that afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message that was, I'll give her this, more sophisticated than I'd expected. Calm. She said she understood if I was upset about the dinner and that she'd talked to my mother, who was sorry. Not, I'm sorry, but my mother is sorry, which was a careful distinction, and that she hoped we could get past this. She said she and my brother were in a difficult position financially right now, and that losing access to the account had created a real problem. She said she didn't want things to be like this between us. I didn't call back. 3 days later, my mother called. I answered because I always answer when my mother calls. Old reflex. You're punishing me, she said, without preamble, without hello. I'm not punishing you, I said. I just stopped paying for things. You stopped paying for my security system. Yes, what am I supposed to do? I'm 63 years old and I live alone and you know this neighborhood. You can pay for it yourself, I said. It's $48 a month. She was quiet. Then, I can't believe you're doing this. Mom, I said, I've been paying for your home security, your HVAC, half of a bathroom renovation, and dozens of other things for 3 years. I did it because I wanted to help you. I still love you, but I'm not going to keep doing it after what happened at dinner. What happened at dinner, she said, like I'd said something absurd. You're going to cut off your own mother over a dinner. You called me an embarrassment in front of your friends. I was upset. I know. And now I'm making a choice. I'll still be your daughter. I'll still call you. But I'm not going to keep funding a lifestyle and then get told I'm embarrassing in the same month. She cried. I want to be honest about that too. She cried, and it was hard to hear, and I didn't immediately feel righteous or vindicated. I felt sad. I still feel sad about it sometimes. But I stayed on the phone. I didn't change my mind, and when we hung up, I sat with the discomfort until it passed. What happened after that came in waves. My brother's truck got repossessed because, it turned out, they'd been behind on other payments I didn't know about, and losing my contribution tipped something over. I heard about this secondhand from a cousin who texted me about it with a string of question marks, as if I owed her an explanation. My sister-in-law posted something on her social media, vague, the kind of thing designed to be recognized by people who knew but deniable to everyone else, about betrayal and fairness and people who smile at you while counting your mistakes. It got a lot of sympathetic comments from people who had no idea what it was about. I read it once and didn't engage. My mother stopped calling for about 3 weeks. Then she called again and we had a different conversation. She asked, in a smaller voice than I'd ever heard from her, how I'd been paying for all of it without her knowing. I explained that I'd set up automatic payments years ago and she'd never had to see them. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I didn't know it was you. I know, I said. Your brother said the house renovation was being funded by a grant from the city. I paused. That's not true. More silence. He told me the truck was through his company's fleet account. It wasn't. I heard her exhale slowly. I didn't fill the silence. I let her sit with it because I'd had to sit with things too, and it was her turn. Here's what I know now that I wish I'd understood 3 years ago. Generosity without transparency is just a power imbalance waiting to be discovered. I gave without telling anyone I was giving, and that allowed other people to build their stories on top of my money. Stories where they were self-sufficient and capable, where their lifestyle was the result of their own choices, where I was just an occasionally useful relative who showed up to things. The moment I stopped, the stories collapsed. And they were angry at me for the collapse, because they'd forgotten, or never let themselves know, that I was the foundation. My brother and I haven't spoken properly in 4 months. I don't know what we are to each other right now. I'm letting that be unclear for a while because I don't have an answer and I think forcing one would be dishonest. My sister-in-law sent me one more message 3 months ago. She said she hoped I was proud of myself. I thought about that for a day or two and decided that yes, actually, I was. Not proud in a triumphant way. Proud in the quieter sense of having stayed calm, of having told the truth, of having stopped something that was slowly making me smaller even as it looked, from the outside, like generosity. My mother and I talk once a week now. She thanked me eventually. Not for cutting off the payments, she's still unhappy about that, but for telling her the truth about where the money had been coming from. She said she felt like a fool. I told her she wasn't. I told her she'd been led to believe something that wasn't true, and that wasn't on her. I meant it. I still drive past that steakhouse sometimes on my way to the office. I've never gone back inside. I don't think I need to. The woman who walked out of that restaurant didn't need to go back. She had already left.